Well, let's get started. I'm stoked, as you've seen in my notes and in our engagements that we've had offline about our conversation that we're finally having. But it's good timing because, as you know, I've been a founding member on your account for a while now, and that comes with you have the coolest founding membership like bonuses. By the way, like a lot of people, like you get to talk to the person that's cool or different levels of engagement and posts, but yours comes with not only your signed book, but Spartan race discounts, ability to do one with you, and just so many actually personalized, awesome aspects of using that founding membership. So I was stoked when I signed up for that and got to see all the things that came with it. But I withheld reading your book until recently. Phases of life, but sometimes things come to you at a perfect time, and it definitely hit me at a perfect time. But speaking of which, I think it's 9 years now when you were at that dinner party, and an older man asked a very common question to a younger girl about what do you want to be when you grow up? And we've all heard that, but for whatever reason, it resonated with you that night. You went home and you did the coolest Google search I've ever heard of, which was what is the hardest thing that I can do?
Yeah.
And that started this incredible journey that led to this book. What's it like 9 years later just to reflect on that night?
I still wonder what made me type that, right? Because as you know from having read the book, that one Google search, the algorithmic gods, right, led me down this rabbit hole to discover something I'd never even heard of called Spartan racing, obstacle course racing. And, um, as I describe in the book, like I was a skinny, scrawny kid, like last pick for sports teams growing up and, barely justified a gym membership as an adult. I had just done like, what we all do now, a lot of sitting and a lot of staring at screens. Um, and that Google search led me to that to think that I could maybe one day do one race and not die. That was literally my only goal was to do that one race and not die. And so in a few weeks from now, I'm headed to West Virginia for what will be my 57th race. The World Trifecta Championship, 3 days of racing in the mountains of West Virginia. Um, and last year, like so strange for me to say what I'm going to say to you, Kyle, but like last year, I was ranked number one in my age group for Spartan racing in the US National Series, which is so far from 9 years ago. And of anybody, what had to happen in between, like all of the failure and all of the learning and the pain, but to get to that point.
And go back to 9 years. It's not like you were some couch potato who had never done anything in your life. Like, you were a very successful journalist, a published author of a book, a phenomenal book that gets quoted still all the time. Biggest names in the world bring it up on podcasts like we were talking about beforehand. Incredibly successful, doing really well in life. But you had this kind of yearning inside of you for like maybe some untapped part of your soul. And like you said, just things aligned that night that made you go home. And after you searched that, it was at that night or the next morning that you did 5 push-ups and struggled, but
Yeah.
that was your starting point. And your book resonated with me so much because you mentioned it wasn't like, oh, I was actually made for this. You went and did one and it was super successful and you became number one in the world in a year. Absolutely not.
No.
The way you
Yeah.
broke up your book is so much of skill development and progression. And that's true in any capacity of our life. Like, you're not going to, we all have strengths for sure. And you call them, I think in your book, you call them equalizers. And I love that because we all do, sometimes not even aware of it, have things that we're maybe naturally going to be better at on average than somebody else. But even then, so much room for growth. And your book breaks into chapters, skills within obstacle races, but then takes that skill and applies it to what happened on your journey from true beginner novice, not really proficient at anything, to trying, learning, unlearning, relearning, using mentors and coaches, and becoming very proficient, and then number one in the world in your weight class. Just the skill progression was one of my favorite parts of your book and how you weave that in.
Yeah, well, first, as the journalist, I have to course correct. I wasn't number one in the world, number one in the US. I would just hate myself if I didn't correct on that. That was
My
for the
apologies.
national series in Spartan racing. But you said so many things. So first of all, the journey of mastery, which is what I attempted to go on and describe in that book, is something available to all of us at any stage in life. And I think particularly as we start to approach middle age, it is a really powerful tool to get yourself out of this sort of cycle of sameness that we fall into. When we grow up, people praise us for what we're good at, and then we start doing it more and more. So people praised me when I was little for stringing words together, and I read a lot of books, so I kept stringing words together. Kyle, let me tell you how nobody ever praised me on the soccer field or on the basketball court or anything of that nature. I didn't follow that. And I still think there was just a piece of me that always craved something I thought sports intuitively could give me or being strong could give me. I grew up right after Title IX was passed, and women and sports were like the women I saw in high school and growing up, they were strong and they were the most popular girls, and so I wanted to be like them. And I think as a woman, living in New York City, just feeling weak physically is tough, right? And again, it's not that I was a couch potato and you wouldn't look at me and know that, but inside that's what I felt. And so part of becoming highly active and embracing movement and exercise, and then really pursuing this mastery of the sport, that was something that just changed the trajectory in middle age of like who I thought I was, what I thought I could still be. And what I tried to do in the book was take those journalistic skills and then interview some of the smartest people in the world who are behavioral scientists or habit experts, longevity doctors, and create a framework that other people could follow, whatever their journey might be, because it's sure probably not going to be obstacle course racing for most people.
And another one of my favorite parts of the book is how you did that, because the book is, of course, primarily about your journey in midlife, taking on this challenge, this untapped part of where you wanted to go in life that was different than what you've been successful in already. And I love what you said about self mastery. And what I like to write on is physical, mental, social, and spiritual. And we'll probably pretty proficient at least one or two of those areas when we get into adulthood. And then we lean into that and maybe we leave some other areas of our life because those are all interrelated. The
Mhm.
healthier you are physically, the more you can operate mentally and vice versa. And of course, spiritually based on your belief systems and or just at peace you are with your life and whatever's next. And then socially, we're all interdependent on one another and we benefit from having our communities around us, which of course you've written really well on communities. Um, you did such a good job of making your story about obstacle course racing accessible for anybody in any skill set by weaving in those experts. So that I really enjoyed that. And you use this term again, and it could be beneficial for anybody of any age, but you talked about the midlife assassin.
Yeah.
And I love that term because I can still remember as a kid, like your athletic peak, which I played a lot of sports growing up. I was average at most of them, good enough to be on the team and work with the high level guys that went on to college for it and still play a role there. But um, I know I was told athletic peak is 25 to maybe 32, maybe a little longer based on the sport, but you're going to start falling off in your mid 30s. And for sure, when you hit 40, you're over the
Yeah.
hill at 40, right?
Yep.
And so after that, and you hear people talk about it, like just you start slowing down, you can't recover as well. You're more prone to injury. So you're just better off taking it easy, slow playing it. And you didn't even start until you were 45
Mhm.
in this. But the midlife assassin, tell me about where you came up with that concept and kind of what you were getting at there.
Yeah, so, it came to me, I mean, probably in the you're gonna laugh when I say this. So, probably in the shower, because honestly, like, when I was writing the book, we writers have different ways to, like, unlock themselves. Mine happens to be falling water, which is, like, terrible for the environment probably because I just stay in the shower too long, but alas, that it is what it is. So I probably thought of it there, to be honest, but it was a culmination of all of the research about what is happening to us as what you were noting, as we sort of approach our 40s and middle age, and that everything you can think of starts to go downhill. Your respiratory fitness, your cognitive ability, your muscle mass deterioration, like, and you have to fight hard to sort of keep it from declining precipitously, and to basically prepare yourself to enjoy all the things you love for as long as you can. If you coast, it's not going to happen, right? I mean, that is not the way our bodies and were made to do. And so I started to just think of it like this assassin sitting up in the concert hall, in the rafters of a concert hall that's our life, and our life is playing out, and the assassin bides its time while we're young, and then also through our teenage years, and then starts to put us in the crosshairs in the 20s and 30s, and then in the 40s, it's just is starting to pick off things one by one. And slowly, we loved the run, but then we tweak a knee and we never go back, right? Or fishing was what we wanted to do, but we're so busy and our calendars are crammed, just so full. It's like, where's the time? Where's the time? And so and meantime, our bodies are just kind of, all the measurements we take at the doctor's office, they're going south slowly. The cholesterol is getting worse. Your glucose is ticking higher. And just you're maybe adding a pound year by year. I mean, this is a very common cycle. And that's what led me to describe it as the midlife assassin. But, the point of the book, and I think what you do in your Substack community and what I try to do is that there is a way to fight back. Now, we are going to all die, like you and I were talking about that a minute ago. Our mutual friend Michael Easter, he runs a conference called "Don't Die," which I have been to, and that's important. And he signs off his Substack posts like that. But one day we all are going to die. But the question is, as I said before, how do we keep doing what we love with the people we love and be who we are for as long as possible? And movement and physical investment, the spiritual part you talk about, community, cognitive, keeping cognitively sharp, that's all part of it.
Sustainment takes work. You can't be complacent and think you're gonna, like, maintain your skills. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Plasticity works in both ways, but if you wanna maintain, that's gonna take work as well. And if you're working, why not aim up? And sometimes you'll maintain because of that assassin, but
Yeah.
man, at least growing up, I just recall, like, that assassin, objectively, in the ways you described, for sure, takes place around this time in our life based on a lot of variance in our biology, but psychologically, how much power we give that assassin can really influence what we are willing to take on, the risk, and how necessary and unnecessary they may be. And yeah, you see a lot of people trying to mitigate risk in ways that probably compromises fulfillment, compromises their ability to tap into parts of their soul they weren't aware of, and maybe the issues that they've had for a long time. It's funny
Yeah.
you say that you, as a journalist, you have unique environments where you come up with ideas. Shower for you, mine's a sauna for me.
Kind of nice.
And
Yeah.
so, for a while, I was in the sauna, and I'd, like, come up with all these ideas sitting in there. I'm like, I don't have my phone because I take notes on my phone when they come to me.
Yeah.
But I had a buddy, Sam Alima, who writes on Substack as well, on our Substack say, "Dude, take a waterproof notebook in the sauna and a pen and then do." I'm like, "Oh, duh, of course. I have those all over the place." Michael Easter recommends them, and I got a few on that post when he did it recently. So I do that now.
I fall
You
asleep in the sauna. That would never work for me. Like, literally, I get in the sauna and I lay back, and I'm like, I have to set on a timer because I'm scared I'm gonna fall asleep and I'm gonna, like, bake to death in the
Yes.
sauna. So there
Do
you
do
go.
not let that happen.
Yeah, do not let that happen. We all do that. I wonder if you find, like, Kyle, I mean, you're a very disciplined person. Being part of the military is probably, well, I'm guessing that you were probably like that by nature, but being in the military helps you hone that skill. What I hear, and I'm curious if you hear the same thing from people who want to get on a journey to kind of, again, shake themselves out of this cycle of sameness. The biggest obstacle they face, we're talking about obstacle course racing, but obstacle as a metaphor for life is time. The notion of how, especially in midlife when you are dealing with maybe having kids, having a family, having aging parents, still earning a living, a house that you have to keep up, doctor's appointments, the car and the oil, like you have an infrastructure. And people say to me all the time, how in the world can I find time to pursue something new when I can barely get done what I have to do in a day? And I have some thoughts on it myself, and I go through some of my tactics in the book, but I would love to hear some of yours. I'm sure other people listening would too.
Thank you. And time is the best and worst excuse in the world for something that could be a priority or could be of benefit to your life. But obviously, phases of life can dictate your time. Like you and I were talking about beforehand, you are in a new job where writing this book may have been much harder, if not impossible, compared to your previous job, where a lot of your colleagues were on the other side of the world, different time zone that gave you some pockets during the day to get after it for training and write this book. So, for sure, phases of life. I'm in a phase of life right now where I feel like my productivity is not as high as it used to be on Substack because I just had a baby girl, my fourth child. So I'm having to shift a few of my kind of my goals that I have tried to keep up, but I got to make sure first things first, and I'm showing up for the family, showing up for the job, showing up for some of the things that's easier to execute on Substack, but I'm not doing a long form post once a week like I used to. But when it comes to a new endeavor that could be potentially important to you, I, you do this in your book. So you started off by just trying it yourself. So you'd mentioned discipline in the military. And I like to always think about skills that we have. It's best for sure, like, to start training and exercise on your own, that's great, but if and when you think you wanna try something new, particularly later in life, the benefit of a coach and a mentor is, and you do this so well, from your first coach in that gym to then you pursued individualized coaching beyond the gym, and the return on investment that you had with their oversight so you could make the most of the time that you did spend to it, absolutely. For me, a lot of what I do, I bring my children with me. So when I go coach at jujitsu, when I go do certain workouts at parks or outside, like, if I'm not with them, I'm doing stuff when they're sleeping during nap time, like right now,
Yeah.
or before they wake up. So thinking about what my priorities are, and another thing that I try to do with my daily challenge every month, fitness wise, if there's a certain capacity in your life that you want to get a little bit better at, you don't need much time every day. And I always say 10 minutes a day or less, you can have extraordinary transformations in any of those buckets I talk about: mental, physical, spiritual, social, with intention, consistency, and effort. And so I always try to frame those daily challenges to be in at least less than 10 minutes, usually less than 5. And then I self experiment. And some of the transformations I've had, even in skills that I'm not so good at initially, 30 days, less than 10 minutes a day, you can transform your life. And then you keep that up, you create habits, and you keep finding ways to prioritize it. And if you can't find 10 minutes in your day, then you need to talk to somebody else, because I guarantee that you're leaving something on the table.
Yeah, I think that's true. I call those 10 minutes, and I write about this, these time suck slices, right? You'll, if you, I once, so I wrote down in a day kind of everything I did, and I was amazed at how many times I reached for my phone to swipe through Instagram, or remembered I needed something on Amazon and spent 5 minutes ordering that, or, you know, just, checking email, like, again and again and again, like, they were just and once I added all those little time slice sucks up, I realized, "Oh, there's, like, 30 minutes to an hour in a day," and if I can start to bucket those things and say, "Well, I'm only gonna order things on Amazon on Sundays, and I am going to limit the number of times I check social media, and then I live or die by my digital calendar at work." As you said, I'm back in a new job at the Wall Street Journal, creating a new leadership community for executives around the world. So my calendar is just completely blocked and filled, and I live or die by that on the workday. But I block in when I'm going to train. And because it's on that calendar, I don't miss a meeting. I'm not going to miss that workout. And so, um, thinking about the frameworks in our life that we already follow, and then figuring out how to bolt something new that we want to lean into that, versus creating a whole separate system for it. Use the systems that are working for you and integrate it. I think that's one thing that was really helpful for me. Um, and also visual cues. So, habit experts that I spoke to said that this is one of the most important things to form a new good habit, is to have visual stimulation. That is fundamental. So, for instance, if I have a 2.5 hour run that I have to wake up and do the next day, and I know that bed is going to be like calling to me, and I'm going to want to wake up and get coffee, and then I'm going to want to, like, oh, I need to putter around the house, the dog might need to be brushed, or I mean, all the things. If I wake up and I see those running shoes and those clothes and I put them on immediately, it is a signal to my brain, like, you are going to do this now. So I find little things like that, Kyle, to be extraordinarily helpful. They're not super complex, but again, like, I leave a box of, you know, training tools, like whether it's a roller ball for my foot or a balance board, right in the living room. So if I'm walking by and I have one of those time slice sucks, like a 5 minutes, I'll just use it for that instead. And then I'll go back and log on for another meeting if I happen to be working from home. So those are a few of mine.
And those pockets come up when you least expect them, and if you are prepared to meet those pockets, you can find ways to get it in a variety of ways. And one thing I didn't finish my thought on, in the military, we're really good at preaching and implementing discipline, and that's the benefit of coaches or other people keeping you accountable, having you be disciplined. But you don't see it prevalently people get out of the military or even while they're in having self-discipline. And I love that you schedule visibly to your colleagues your training. And I try to make a point of doing that too and announcing it to my team. I mean, we actually, we're allotted time for physical fitness, but there's still that stigma of like, if you're taking time during the workday away to go work out, there's something selfish about that. But sometimes selfish endeavors are selfless because you can sustain your performance. And again, if you're leaving your physical fitness on the table, you're leaving opportunities to maintain your mental resilience and fitness to contribute to the job. And so when we can do that as a team, and I try to promote that by putting it on the schedule, by putting it in the chat when we're doing daily accountability, and inviting people to come with me because, yeah, you prioritize it and then you're going to make it happen. But the self discipline aspect is a different skill than discipline. And
Yeah.
find a way to be consistent initially so you can make it easier with visual cues and everything else, and whatever works well for you. Because it doesn't take much time, it doesn't take much effort once you implement that prioritization and that self discipline behind it.
Yeah, and so I wanna go back to something you said about, people that people feeling like they need to slip out of the office to go to the gym, or that they would, be embarrassed that like, that's how they're spending some of their time. I am trying very hard to establish a curriculum through the Leadership Institute about executive endurance and executive longevity because people who want to function well in their jobs for as long as possible, and we know from the data that this is happening. The average age of a CEO is now 58. You see people serving on boards until their 70s. You can't do that if you are not taking care of yourself physically. You will not be at your sharpest. You will not make the best decisions. You will not be able to keep up with people who are 10, 15, 20, 30 years younger than you are, travel, whatever it might be. So if you enjoy what you do for your career and you want to stay in the game and you want to lead and you want to have leadership longevity, let me tell you how fundamental this is to you. Not only your movement, but the fuel you put into what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, what you're drinking, your recovery, how you are sleeping, and also just preventative medicine, medicine 3.0. Don't wait till something goes wrong for medicine, like in medicine 2.0, and then you have to go and treat it with drug. Like, what are you doing to prevent these things that are coming for you, that are coming for all of us? And we're so lucky, Kyle, that we're living in a world now where we have access to data about our bodies that people didn't have 20 years ago. I mean, what you can track through just simple blood work, a ring on your finger for your sleep, your smartwatch, the I mean mattress you sleep on. Like, you can have data that can help you fine tune this and have an edge longer and just sustain longer in whatever you want to do. And even if that's not, again, being in a sport like mine happened to do, and it may be just that you just love your career and you want to be um, involved with it longer. Like, this has to be a priority, and you need to make it a priority for your teams. And companies need to understand that. And I think the C-suite leaders, the CEOs, and people I talked to at the institute, they're really coming around to this. So I'm super happy you brought it up.
A beautiful message. And it's funny you bring up wearables because I have never in my life consistently worn a biometric wearable that gives any Physmon data whatsoever. I actually do a lot of research on it on the military side for evaluating human performance in extreme environments to see what kind of capabilities and or programs we can implement to make the human operate as well as possible in response to the system or the aircraft, from a variety of different angles, which is very interesting. So Physmon gives us a lot of great data. But of course, day to day gives us a lot of great data too on how well we're doing when we sleep, where we're at with things like resting heart rate, variability in workouts, and that's all great data. But I've never done it because I'm such a believer of subjective being more important than objective. Illness aside, different pathologies aside, of course, we need to track things like that so we can intervene as early as possible. But I love the idea of listening to my body and what it's telling me, but also just mentally allowing my body to get after it until I realize I need to dial things back if I am under recover, overtrained. But I'm doing this just to kind of see where I'm at. but it relates to another one of my favorite things that you wrote on in the book, crystallized intelligence, and that being an equalizer and an edge sometimes for those that are in their 30s, 40s, or beyond, because you know your body more, you know your experiences, you know how you can operate and perform in the environments that you are to maintain your edge. Tell me a little bit about like your experience, not only as an obstacle course racer with crystallized intelligence, but also in the workplace where you are a leader and impacting other people, which I love to hear now, not only at Wall Street Journal, but across the world executively.
You know, it happened to be a bunch of wasps, like stinging wasps that were the first time I really began to think about this. And then I'll delve a little bit beyond that. But I was in a race in West Virginia where I'm going, and I'm dreading it already, but there is a portion of the course where inevitably you're heading down toward a creek bed. And for whatever reason, the course is set where wasps are like burrowed in the ground. And I was in a race and I had this was the first time I think I was in a North American championship race. I'd worked so hard to get there. I was halfway through the race. I heard people screaming in the woods. And I was like, what's going on? And there were all these people stopped at the top of the trail, and they weren't running. They're like, oh, there's a bunch of like wasps and bees and stuff down there stinging people. So you either had to quit and like quit the race, or you had to walk up a mountain, in which case you weren't going to like finish in any time that was respectable, or you just had to go for it. Now I'm allergic to wasps, not in the way like I'm going to end up in the hospital, but like badly enough that I'm going to swell up. And so I followed some guy down and he got stung like all over his chest and he was screaming. And I was like, oh, he protected me. And then the next thing I knew, six of them were on my leg and they were just stinging. And I had to go into a creek bed and pluck them out. The thing that crystallized intelligence came into play, I remembered when I was a kid and getting stung by jellyfish, my parents putting like cold compresses of mud on me, kind of from the bottom of the ocean, like until they could get me somewhere and get me treated. I was like, oh, so I went into the creek bed and I stuffed wet mud in my racing tights, and that allowed me to finish the race until I could go and get some Benadryl. Uh, that though wasn't like I wouldn't have finished the race necessarily if I hadn't had that crystallized intelligence, that experience. And so that came into play again and again in racing to be an equalizer for me, because in obstacle course racing, you compete against, unless you're an elite racer, you're competing against people of your own age group, but we're all carrying the same weight. Like if you're 55, 65, you are carrying the same 40 or 60-pound weight as someone who is 25. You're a little bit carrying it heavier if you're a man, but it is the same for the ages. You're climbing the same 17-foot rope, scaling the same 8-foot wall. So you have to have things that are going to be equalizers for you. And so, for instance, I know how to learn and I know how to not take things for granted. And in a race where the temperatures had plummeted, I was really prepared. I prepared for weeks and months on end, learning what gear to wear so I could do a cold water swim, come out and not get hypothermia. And I find, to go to your really good point about the workplace now, you have a patience and you have been and seen all the sort of workplace crises that have floated around for years and years, and you've seen how they play out and how people get spun up about so many things, and they just think it's the world is ending on one thing. And to be the person in the room who has that knowledge and can sort of sit back and help settle everybody else in the room, to have everybody take a deep breath, to sort of pick out what is most important of a situation, focus on that, put other things aside. That is a gift that I couldn't do that in my 20s and 30s. I could do a lot of great things. I think I was really good at many things in the workplace, but I sure didn't have this ability to see the big picture, to go macro and micro, to take a deep breath, to have patience about things, to see other people struggling and failing and know that that doesn't mean that they necessarily shouldn't be there, but that you just haven't gotten them in the right place, that you haven't recognized what their attributes are and put them into the right place. And so when we're younger, it's kind of like we're impatient and we're like, oh, get that person off the team. But you just start to see where they could fit better. And so I find that is something, crystallized intelligence has played across both sport and work.
Beautiful. That skill of calm and perspective and the unique domains we operate, really, we can have all the knowledge in the world, but that knowledge won't translate to wisdom until you put time in the game and
Yeah.
you're in it for a while. So like, I always like to say wisdom is knowledge applied, but that's definitely over time. And the way you describe crystallized intelligence, it's so spot on with that and beautiful tie into the workplace too at the end. That's it just helps people remember no matter where you are in life, if you are newer in a different domain or you're just struggling, like changing your perspective, approaching it with, "Hey, this is gonna take some time, but I can change my body from the inside out if I show up and focus on the skills that are gonna help me here, and also learn from the people that have been here maybe a little bit longer and have some of those attributes that I want to absorb myself, whether it be calm, perspective, or whatever is unique for where you're operating."
I'd also say to the point of mastering something new and hard, at a time when, again, you think, "Well, I'm supposed to have it dialed in now, like, I know who I am, I know what I'm good at, um, I don't wanna look foolish because I'm at an age where I'm supposed to kinda be, like, the wise one in the room." But when you go and learn something new and hard where you have to struggle and fail and look a little silly at times, and you do that, in kind of midlife and beyond, it will open up new worlds to you in ways you didn't ever think it would. And that happened to me with work, right? I think I would have stuck with a kind of traditional media path, because it was safe and it was what I knew. But once I started embracing obstacle course racing, I was like, I got to offer to go work at a tech startup. I would never have thought of doing that, but I was like, well, if I can learn to climb a 17-foot rope and carry a 40-pound sandbag up a mountain and swing my body, my middle-aged body across monkey bars, I can figure this out. And then the generative AI revolution happened while I was at that tech company, and I got a crash course in it from some of the smartest engineers and people in the world. I wouldn't have been there, Kyle, had I not said, I'll just go in and look kind of stupid for a few months and then I'll pick it up and learn it. Likewise, I don't even know if I would have made the pivot to go back to the Wall Street Journal to run a new leadership institute had this all not happened to me with this journey of mastery. So it's we are integrated more than we believe we are. We think we compartmentalize things sometimes, but it's amazing how they can carry over into different parts of our life. So I just want to draw a line into that for your listeners.
Beautiful. Convergence in all areas are possible with that open mind, with that willingness to be a beginner and take on new challenge, and, again, that's just so well articulated in your book and just now. I don't know why I've been saying it since I was a kid. I wish I remember the original time I started calling things a mental state, which is the reason behind my account name, Resilient Mental State. But I know I was influenced, I'm sure, by movies and some people I looked up to for calling everything under the sun for the most part a mental state. And there obviously is a lot of good data behind the power of our mind in relation to a lot of our urges and or symptoms, helping us not only manage them, but sometimes decrease them when it is something like pain. So with pain being a mental state, I actually had I tore your book apart, by the way. Notes, highlighted it, different things inside of it. And one of the things that I wrote down so I wouldn't forget today was when you were stung by all those wasps. And then a different time when you fell off one of the ropes onto your tailbone. Did you break your tailbone that day?
Yeah, like, I had fractured my coccyx once, in college, which was just right out of college. It was stupid. I was on a dance floor on New Year's Eve, and I slipped off somebody spilled beer on the stairs, and I slipped and fractured my cock so it was already, kind of if you've ever fractured a coccyx your tailbone, you know how, like, it's then kind of fragile after that. So I was on an obstacle in Abu Dhabi for the World Championship in the Middle East, and I had flown, what, 7,000 miles to be there, and I went and got up on this obstacle, and you kinda have to prop your legs up on it. It's on, like, a wall like this, and you're kind of in a V like this, hanging from chains with your arms, and your feet are on it. Someone had been on the chains before me who must have had, like, suntan lotion on their hands, and I got on there, and the next thing I knew, I had hit the salt flat, like, just right on my coccyx. I stood up, and I knew right at that moment I had probably refractured. I mean, obviously, I didn't have a doctor there, but when I took one step, it was searing. So, uh, it was a choice between getting off the course or kind of walking as fast as I could the rest of the way through it. I thought about David Goggins, who is somebody I'm sure you know who he is, but a man who has achieved unbelievable superhuman feats physical feats and has written his own great book called Can't Hurt Me. I think that's right. Did I say that? Yeah.
Right.
And, yeah, I think he has this rule where it's for the 60-40 rule that when you think you're fully done and baked, you're actually only 60% of the way done. And there's 40% left in your tank that you don't know that you have. And that's what I told myself in that race. And I kept going and I said, just make sure you finish and don't be last. And that is exactly what happened. I was next to last, but I finished the race. So that has come up a lot, having a sort of mental state like that. But I want to be really careful, Kyle, that like sometimes when we do interviews like this and we have these conversations, it starts to sound really so easy because we're talking about the times like where we came through and it was great. And um, we achieved this. I mean, there are so many dark parts of this. Like we're all human, and I struggled a lot, as you know, in the book. There were just other life things got in the way. I got a melanoma diagnosis, which is a very deadly form of skin cancer, and I was lucky we called it early. But the anxiety from that of like thinking about my mortality, I mean, that nearly crushed me. And I if I hadn't had racing on the horizon, like, I don't know what would have happened. And there's so many days where I wake up and it's not like I'm like, let's go work out. Like I woke up today and I was exhausted, the commute this week and I've got so much travel coming up. But it's having these frameworks you and I talked about where you do it even if you don't want to do it. And you do it even if it feels bad. And probably when you're done, you're going to be a little bit happier than when it started. But there's just going to be a lot of times where you're going to have some self forgiveness because you might not get it done on that day. Life, you're just going to get in the way. Your kid could get sick. Your parents need something. You have to be there for your family. I don't want people to like take away like it's always super easy and that it's not, and that it's bad if like a day comes and you can't stick to your plan because you will not be able to stick to it all the time.
I really appreciate that, and I try to be careful in my writing too and provide exceptions to all these things that I say because so many times in my life have I ignored signals of pain or other signals that were telling me there was something wrong. But the power of the mind truly is remarkable. We can endure acutely and then sometimes even chronically, despite all of these internal external stressors, just through sheer will. And that is tremendous. And that is the reason why our species has grown in the ways that we have in extreme environments. However, there are times to acknowledge these signals more than just seeing them and then letting them slide by, where a certain pain or a certain, you name it, could be a sign of something that needs true intervention, true reason to rest and stop, and the dichotomies again to all things. And yeah, I wholeheartedly believe pain is a mental state, but that doesn't mean never listen to your pain or never acknowledge what that signal can tell you in certain environments. But if you have the option after breaking your tailbone of knowing what that is and that you're not going to cause yourself risk of life if you finish, you're going to cause yourself a lot more pain for a
Yeah.
while, but
Yeah.
you're going to grit through that. And then after you do that, you can do much harder things than you used to
Right.
do. I wonder, have you always had a high pain tolerance though? Or was this because you loved ops course racing so much, this race was important to you for everything you had accomplished thus far? Was pain tolerance something you developed through your kind of capacity to love this challenge, or did you always have a higher pain tolerance?
Yeah, people always ask about pain tolerance, and I'm sort of like, how do you compare your pain tolerance to someone else? Like, unless like you're like someone takes a chainsaw to all of us. But so I don't know
I'm
the
talking more
answer.
younger Wendy to Wendy of ops course racing years.
Yeah, no, I think I've probably had it to some degree because I think back I went on there's this, expedition, called Outward Bound where you go off in the woods or you basically are taking these excursions for weeks at a time, and I did one after in high school where I was in a lot of pain throughout it because I was like, I had no muscle mass, I wasn't in shape, I was carrying, like, probably a 50-pound pack on a 110-pound body, like, it was for 14 days, and it was awful. Um, but I got through it, like, even though I was in pain all the time. So maybe but I think it's this, I mean, more than anything else. But I will tell you, when you have something you're working for and you've worked so hard for it, when you get to these races that are big moments, or you were if you were had been practicing music and you had a performance or something that was a goal you had been working toward, and you get in that, and there's something physically like that happens where you think you can't finish, just resetting and knowing how important that is, that's when you're gonna tap into that 40%. And I think just knowing that that 40% was there and believing that it was there was the thing that got me through that one race with my tailbone. Um, and probably a lot of other I mean, look, I've had races where I've torn my shoulder with barbed wire, I've been badly bruised. Once I fell and hit my head and they had to check me for a concussion afterward. I'm sure no one listening to this is ever gonna do a Spartan race now that they're hearing me talking, but I swear that's few and far between. Most races, none of this has ever happened. But I try to be super, super careful. And I'll tell you something about injury. Where you're most likely to get injured is when you stop because you're not paying attention anymore. I have twisted my ankle so many times when a race was done walking through the field, afterward, or when I'm done with a run just outside of my house because I've let down my guard. So you have to be really careful after that. But I do think we all have more pain tolerance probably than we think we do.
I'm not certain of anything, but I definitely believe in my heart, and if anything, it's just an empowering thought that can maybe help shift you even a few degrees, that we're just a culmination of skills, and I think for sure pain tolerance is just yet another skill that can be trainable. Of course, safety considered, not taking on unnecessary risk, but I think that is something, and particularly if you are healthy enough and in a place, or even if you have some pain, like ways to push the envelope and get return on that investment that may apply to another part of your life that you never could have foreseen. Like again, the phases of life and the opportunities that we don't even know are there. If you are able to do something, you do that, it may apply to parts of your life that you never thought it could.
Yeah, can we reframe the pain? Let's reframe pain and call it discomfort.
Yeah.
Because I actually, when we talk about pain, I mean, I don't want anybody to think they should be like in real pain and have to just like suffer through that. I mean, or at least that's not the message I want to get across. What I'm more talking about is discomfort. And we live in a world now and where we have so much comfort at our fingertips, whether it's the food we order on our apps and the things we can instantly call up on our phones, the cars that we live in, I mean, we all know it, the modern conveniences. And so discomfort is not something we're accustomed to, which it was when we were, humans were very accustomed to discomfort when they had to hunt for their own food and hike long distances to find water and just to live. I think getting comfortable with discomfort is a really valuable thing because you do not know what life is going to throw at you. We live in a world that is fast changing every day on so many fronts. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. There are people who feel very nervous sending their kids to school because their kids now have to go through active shooter training when they go to school. Like that is uncomfortable. I go into Midtown Manhattan and there's guards outside of our building every day. They're protesters. Like, there's things that are just uncomfortable, sort of mentally. And then I think physically pushing yourself and having some discomfort is a good thing. And that's different than pain. And so I just kind of want to draw some edges around that.
It's an important reframe. For most stressors that cause discomfort and not true pain, because pain could be a signal of slowing down, modifying, or even stopping
Yeah.
based on your unique circumstance. I'll just I like extreme examples because if the extremes are possible, then we can apply them to the more mild and moderate. So when I was an undergrad at Ohio State, I had an internship in the James Cancer Hospital working in pain and palliative care. So I supported a lot of physicians and then the psychology team working with these terminally ill patients who had poor prognoses, 9 or 10 out of 10 on the pain scale, just tough situations. And talking to those physicians and those psychiatrists, they would talk about their goals with the patients with me on the side. And like you would think their goal is to make them as comfortable as possible. If you can get their pain down to a 1 or a 0, absolutely. Like, well, that's unrealistic. It's impossible. And also, even if it wasn't a poor prognosis, that wouldn't help them. If you take somebody from extreme pain down from a 9 to a 1, any relapse or any other issue, they've now not developed any skills to manage that underlying issue. So you can change someone's life by taking them on any bothersome or issue, what in this case, pain, from a 9 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10. And then now you start pulling in other capabilities like sleeping a little bit better, eating a little bit better, moving a little bit more, framing your perspective a little bit
Mhm.
more. And oftentimes they would talk about it was less the medication, more the therapy and the mindset shift that you could have of like particularly behind acceptance. So for when this is again extreme example, but with chronic pain or issues that are not something progressively getting worse or of concern that needs intervention, we can manage far more than what we think is possible. But it's it requires acceptance of the things that you can't control and then focus on the things that you can. But your reframe for discomfort, for what we're primarily talking about today, is important because pain and discomfort are two different things. Where pain is more physical, I would say, and discomfort is more psychological.
Yeah.
But there's overlap, and we need to differentiate that based on the stressor we are taking on because that physical stressor, if it's causing pain in areas that you have an injury or a previous surgery, we should listen to that signal.
Yeah.
But if you're just fatigued or your muscles are just burning, that's discomfort. It's a physical signal, but it's a choice that you're making on how you respond to that. And that's where that 60/40 comes into play big time.
I've never been more uncomfortable than when I was dealing with anxiety after that melanoma diagnosis. I mean, it was the only time in my life I sort of thought to myself, mm, I don't know that I want to like keep living like that. Like it was it was there's no physical pain I've ever had that was that uncomfortable as that was. And so now when I am in a very uncomfortable physical situation, like I will be in a few weeks in these races, and my legs are going to be shot, and they're going to be screaming, and I'm going to be hurting, and it's going to be hot, and I'm going to feel like everything's gone. I just have to think back to that moment when I really was terrified about my own mortality. Uh, and I can keep going. I mean, that is honestly because that discomfort, even though it wasn't physical, so outweighs the discomfort of my legs hurting or being tired, right? So again, I think people can, for different pieces of their life, discomfort can mean different things. Um, and you can, as you said before, you can train for discomfort. Even taking cold showers is a way to train for discomfort. Getting in a cold, I don't have a, I have a sauna, but I don't have a cold plunge. But what I have blocks of ice, and I put them in my bathtub, and I get in there, and it is deeply uncomfortable to be sitting in that bathtub for 3 to 5 minutes. But that trains you well as well. So there's a whole continuum. I'm glad you brought it up.
Another beautiful example of crystallized intelligence. Without that previous trial, maybe your perspective on getting through some of your current challenges wouldn't be the same. And the power of reflection, not only to the past, but the future on both our goals and things that we're trying to plan for, but also those uncertainties and those worst case scenarios. But I love the power of reflecting on previous trials that you've been through because you talk about crystallized intelligence. You can do hard things. You have done hard things in your life to whatever capacity, and you probably could even do harder if you had to. But
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up because you're extremely vulnerable in this book, talking about many different trials in the past and during the journey that you were on when you're becoming a professional obstacle course racer, number one in the U.S. But if I were you number five in the world, or I was remembering a top five category. Was that international?
Last year, well, you wouldn't know this from the book, but last year in the what they call the trifecta world championship that was in Greece last year, it's the one I'm going to run in West Virginia. I did take fifth place
There we go.
in the end over 3 days, but again, I am humbled by the people who I see out there, and I'm humbled by the people older than I am, women and men, who are faster than we are. I mean, it is to some degree, like you're self-selecting at that point, right? When you're over 50 and you're there, like you've got to have done something right to be able to still be in the game and get through it. But I am amazed at what people can do. People who have, young children and are still, or children who are in junior high, and they're balancing everything and they're making it happen. Their kids are out there with them, and it's a beautiful, like you said, you take your kids with you. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to see.
It's so cool. And just so you know, I mentioned this already, but your book, fired me up. I experienced basically the whole emotional spectrum based on the different chapters and what you're writing about. But one thing's for sure, I couldn't put it down because it got me fired up. Like I wanted to compete as soon as possible. And as you know now, I've done some ops course racing back in the day. I've done many team events. I did a Warrior Dash before I joined the military. I was still in grad school, but then I did one pro course in Guam, and that went pretty well. But my son, my 5-year-old, who's going to be 6 pretty soon, he loves climbing things. He loves monkey bars. He's becoming more athletic every day, and he loves the idea of working out. He's coming out of his shell on the shy side, but I could see obstacle course racing being something that he's really interested in doing. And I'm thinking about like what challenge to take on next as I've gotten healthier after a shoulder surgery. And it's funny when things come into you in your life. I'm like, oh yeah, I love obstacle course racing. So like when I read your book, which I already knew your story, but just reading that book lit a fire under me. And so I'm looking at the upcoming Spartan races and other ones around me so I can take him with me so he can watch me and see that opportunity for himself in the kids races, or we do a team one together, whatever's possible. But inspiring stuff.
Yeah. Well, we probably should have done this at the beginning for people who don't know what it is, but obstacle course racing is generally you're running cross country and in mountainous or farmland terrain, anywhere from 5K to a 21K to a 50K in some cases for an ultra race. And you're doing obstacles in between that are like military style obstacles, whether it's crawling under barbed wire, swinging from monkey bars, climbing a rope, scaling walls. Sometimes there's a cold water swim, carrying heavy buckets of rocks up and down mountains. You say this, and people are like, "You do this." My mother's still like, "You do this? Why?" Do you know what my mother's? Do you know what she hates the most about the obstacle course race that I do? It's not anything you would guess. It is the fact that there's something called the dunk wall with mud. Like, you go through these mud pits, and then you go through a dunk wall. She thinks I come from the South, and my Southern mother thinks it's the most disgusting thing in the world that I am crawling through mud and going under that dunk wall. Like, she's horrified by it. Forget, like, all the other dangerous things that are part of the race. Like, she is horrified by the mud.
I love, I love it. I do want to talk about your parents and some of your closest community here in a little bit, but so I don't forget on the topic of mental states. And you actually, I mentioned it before, but you broke up your book into chapters based on those obstacles you just described, which was just a fun way to frame that book and your skill progression through each one, and again how it related to your journey. But going back to mental states, one of the things that I say most often, and I've done this since a kid, as I would say, being cold is a mental state until hypothermia. But then I learned about Wim Hof. And
Yeah.
Wim Hof, of course, he kind of disproved that actually hypothermia can be reversible in with proper training. He is, of course, mainly at rest, which is very important. I'll bring up a personal story here in a moment. But and he's using a breathing protocol to hyperoxygenate your body, hyperventilate, and all of those things combined can actually, they've shown through science, put you in a hypothermic state and then reverse it, which is just remarkable. So now I was saying for a while, being cold is a mental state until frostbite. However, circumstance, condition, whether you're wet or cold, and your exertion level greatly influences that. And you experience it personally and through your coach. Powerful in the story, the impacts of being cold, not just being a mental state. Tell me about dealing with that stressor and how difficult, I mean, how much that changes the playing field, both for you and in general.
Well, I was just foolish in the beginning, Kyle. I mean, like, I think it was what, maybe my, I don't know, third race. I decided I was going to go do I was feeling so good. I was on the like climb, because when you start from here, all you're doing in the beginning is getting better. Um, but I hadn't learned any, so I decided to do a half marathon race, here in New Jersey in the mountains. It was April, but it was cold. Knew nothing about what gear to wear, so I was wearing, like, cotton shirts and pants, and I had nothing for my hands, like, and gloves, and I hit that cold water, the dunk wall, the thing my mother hates, and went under it and came I was like, my whole body went into shock, and I came out of it, and then you have a very slow climb up a mountain after that, so I couldn't get warm, and I was stupid. I had my hydration vest on that was pressing all the cold to me, um, and I could my skin started turning purple, my legs started seizing up. I'm fine. By the time I got to the bucket carry where you carry a 40-pound bucket of rocks, my teeth were chattering so hard that, like, my jaw, like, my I felt my teeth were gonna break, and a, uh, guy who was there as a volunteer wrapped me in his like, he took his coat, he wrapped me in his coat and held me, and he was like, "Do you wanna quit?" And I was like, "No, I can't quit. I can't quit because 'cause I'm a Virgo and I'm stubborn, I'm stupid." And so I, like, stumbled down the mountain, like, I'm, like, dragging one of my leg, I'm, like, running into people. And finally, like, my eyesight starts to, like, get blurry. I was like, "You know what? My body just made the decision. My dumb mind could not." Like, my mind was so resilient, it was like, "Go, go, go," but my body made the decision that it couldn't turn me around, and it was uh it's the only race to date that I've dropped out of. It's called a DNF, did not finish, and that, like, ride down in that ATV to the medic tent, and, it's one of I mean, it was humbling, right? Not only because I was in pain, but um, I was, like, embarrassed, like, I was like, "I didn't finish." I quit, and I struggle with that, and that was a turning point, and, um, I think had I not, uh, picked up the phone the next day and called and found a coach, like you mentioned, a new coach, I don't know, that might have been one of my last race, and you and I would never be having this conversation, but cold is something your body, um, it between air temperature and the water temperature and what starts to happen to the capillaries of your skin and how it can slow down your thinking and you can seize up, like, it is something we need to be aware of, not just for racing, but for life, like, if you fall in to the water, if you're on a boat or a dock, we just need to all be very aware of what can happen to us.
And getting wet is a big differentiator too. So
Yeah.
if you dry versus wet, and crystallized intelligence again, you learn from that experience, you prepared accordingly, so you could take care of not only how wet you were, but where you were applying warm versus your ability to still exert after in these extreme conditions. Whereas your coach, who if I recall was a professional for I think just the adults, like all ages, she was younger,
Yeah.
and she DNF'd for a really challenging race that you did exceptional at because of the cold. And that was, and again, crystallized intelligence for you. I think there was even like some mockery or some joking about how prepared you were,
Yeah.
and like there's definitely over preparing, but at the same time, like you can over prepare and then get rid of stuff. You can't under prepare and then add stuff on when you're in the thick of it.
No. She's a machine. I mean, like, she's an elite racer. She had known nothing but success her whole career, and she lives in a body I've never known or experienced. So, we went to Lake Tahoe for a world championship, and I had been watching, because 'cause I'm now a prepper and a learner, and I had that experience in New Jersey that I never wanted to have again. And so I had seen that the temperatures were plummeting in Tahoe for September. So I literally I bought like this gear. I had like neoprene pants and neoprene socks. I had like little warmers that were going to go in my pockets. I had these Bleg mitts, these neoprene mitts and gloves. And she came to my house she came here actually to practice her spear throw because I had a spear throw stand in my backyard. She came in my house and she's like, "Oh my God, Wendy." She's like, you're gonna like die and all with all this gear." And she's like, "You don't need that." And I was like, "Okay." And I felt kind of stupid, but I knew full well I was gonna bring it anyway. So I brought it and I rehearsed in the hotel room every night, the night before the race, taking on off my clothes so that when it came time for the cold water swim, so the next day it was snowing and there was ice all over the obstacles. They had to chip it off. They had to start the race late because it was so cold. So we went up the mountain and we went through that first cold water swim and I had taken off most of my clothes, put them in a dry bag, tied the dry bag around my back so that I would have dry clothes when I got out, swam with that dry bag on my back. You have to take all your gear with you. You can't leave it on the shore. And I got out and had that and put that back on. And that's how I finished. She kind of showed up, because she's so strong and so good. And she was like, "Oh, wait, it's cold." And she borrowed a jacket from one of the guy racers halfway up, like, she couldn't make it because she didn't have the right gear, and that was a turning point for her, I think, professionally and emotionally and as just a and, I was lucky I finished, but wasn't because I was great, it was just because was prepared.
Yeah, it sounded like she was legitimately hypothermic, and that's
She
very
she
hard.
was, yeah.
Yeah, very hard to reverse when you're exerting from what I've read and kind of what I've experienced based on your level of exertion. And again, whether or not you're soaked. If you're soaked from cold water, that's just going to be tough to recover unless you're wise like you and prepare accordingly like you did. So my personal story, my in-laws, they have this probably 100-yard hill at their house. So I love using it for workouts when we go and visit them. And it was wintertime. And so my crazy ass decides to grab a 50-pound plate and just in basketball shorts and nothing else, hike up and down that hill. And my goal was 10 times. So I'm barefoot in the snow going up and down, but it's just walking. And my
Yeah,
heart rate's not up and I'm not wet. 2, 3 laps in, my feet feel pretty numb,
yeah.
but I'm focused on my breathing, I'm focused on my exertion level, trying to keep it close to nasal breathing, so it's, like, at that 60% or so, and I kept telling myself, "1 more lap, you're not like, it's not dangerous yet, it's not frostbite, you'll stop if your feet harden up on you," and by the time I got to 6, 7, I started feeling warm, and by the end, I decided to do 1 more lap, and I felt great. I walked inside and I felt warm, I was radiating heat and just like in the zone in a way. So I got all cocky and I came back home, still wintertime, and I did one of my outdoor workouts with my team, and it was a Tabata workout.
Mm.
So high exertion levels, short recovery periods. Same thing. Just wore basketball shorts to be the dumbass that I am and we're getting after it. And I feel the cold. I think about trying to control my breathing, the short rest periods that we have and in between sets, and it's just not happening. And by the end, my feet, and now this is only an hour. These aren't these long races like you, and I wasn't in the water. I would have been hypothermic for sure. You had um, those constraints in. But after that hour, it took me a good 15 minutes to feel my feet again. And it was stupid. So, like, a lesson for me there was like exertion level is going to really influence that hypothermia being a mental state or not. And then I read your book and I'm like, well, and of course, water will affect that too. So yes, a lot of things are mental states to a point. They become physical states real quick and they can
Yeah.
get dangerous.
Yeah, that was a physical state, and I don't ever plan to be in that situation again if I can help it, right? So, that's what I mean, like, there's a kinda pain where you're like, "Nope, no more." You don't wanna lose those feet, Kyle, let me tell you something, you need your feet.
Yes, ma'am. I'll prepare accordingly from now on. Thank you for wisdom.
Good, good.
Um, you talk about in the book dreaming about obstacle course racing.
Mm.
So I dream about some of my own endeavors too, and I'm curious as you started dreaming about your obstacle course races as you were a beginner up to where you are today. Has your performance and your dreams changed as you've changed?
That's such an interesting question. Yes. Well, um in the beginning, I was dreaming about trying to learn obstacles, like, I would be on them and I would have these happy dreams where suddenly I would master something and might figure out how to, like, hold these little rock climbing things and climb in a way I hadn't been able to do or to swing in a way I get my body to move. So when I was learning the skills of the obstacles, I would dream about them and figure them out in my dreams. I'd be so happy when I wake up and like, wait, I can't actually do this yet, but it would be inspiring for me to think about it. My stress dreams, um, which I still have, when I'm, like, stressed in life in general, it translates into obstacle course racing, and the way it manifests itself is I'm either caught in a wall of mud, my mother's nightmare, and I can't get out of that wall of mud, like, I literally can't get to the top, so I'm just stuck, or more often than not, I'm in the middle of the race and it's not clearly marked, and I can't find my way to the next obstacle or to the finish line, like, I'm just lost, so the way we used to all dream about, oh, being late for class or not having been prepared for an exam, or some people have like their teeth are falling out. Like my stress dream is I'm lost on a course. Um, I do though occasionally have dreams uh about being in a race where I'm in flow. And I've only really known that once or twice in a race, that state of flow where it's just like your mind disconnects from your body and everything is cranking and it's just I know that state writing, but I'd never known it physically until once in a race, which I describe in the book. But occasionally now I will dream kind of this, I think it's a want I have to have that again.
And that state of flow, by the way, was in Ohio from the book. So I remembered that. I was like, hey, look, it
Yeah.
was in my home state when she experienced flow physically for the first time. But such
Yes.
a real experience. It's so cool where it's kind of like you're out of your body, but at the same time, you're just dialed in doing what you've learned. But you have to
Yeah.
be some semblance of confidence in an endeavor to be able to flow within it. So it's very hard to flow as a true beginner when you're learning. But I love what you said about your dreams, where you're like learning in your dreams. You're thinking about the techniques, and we know dreaming helps absorb the knowledge and wisdom that we get that day to try and embed memories for that learning. So the fact that you're actually visualizing in your dreams, how cool. And yeah, I've experienced something similar with mixed martial arts and jujitsu. I grew up before I even started training. Whether it was like an intruder in my house that I'd be scared of, or somebody grabbing me out of nowhere, I would freeze. I couldn't get a punch off. I was slow motion. I was just like a deer in headlights and just not able to do anything. And then as I started training, it's remarkable my performance in some of these scary dreams that I have. They're not so scary anymore, and like that, I guess the confidence that I have in my soul from training. And by all means, I don't think I'm invincible by any means. I don't want to fight anybody unless it's for fun and training or agreed upon. But my performance in my dreams has changed over time as I've been in that arena, and my confidence has shifted as well. So it's interesting, like the dreams and what it can tell us. But if I'm in a bad place, like you said, if I'm stressed,
Yeah.
it doesn't always show up that way. Like the dreams can tell us things if we remember them and think about them. I haven't gotten a dream analysis too much in my life, but it's an interesting thought for the dream researchers out there. Performance in dreams compared to competency and confidence in real life.
People often ask me, like, how do you what they'd say, "I don't know what I wanna try and master," right? Like, they're like, how do you know when it's something that you wanna pursue deeply?" And I think the sleep test is one of them. Like, if it's the last thing you're thinking about before you're going to bed and the first thing you're thinking about when you wake up, and then if you're also dreaming about it in a way that feels quite positive most of the time. I think that's a pretty good signal. Like that moment where that is our brains do something when we sleep that we can't control necessarily. And so you get a lot of signaling that way. I've had signaling through my dreams about jobs, relationships that I needed to get out of, like metaphors of carrying a I remember ending a very bad relationship and having this dream where I was had a heavy backpack on and literally like the backpack exploded off my back and I was suddenly weightless going up this mountain. Like it sounds a little bit cliche, but I remember it to this day. And this was like 25 years ago. So our dreams tell us things, Kyle. And I think if you're searching for what your not too late might be or what your journey of mastery is going to be, that can be one thing that tells you. And it's also, what are the things you loved to do when you were a kid and just maybe dropped because as you got older, it seemed like, well, this is not something I have time for as an adult, right? There might have been things that brought you joy. And they always say if you can find something you were made fun of as a kid and you get good at it, that it becomes your superpower. And in my case, I was just made fun of for all my sort of physical non abilities. So to feel like I in some small way in my own little world overcame that, um, I carry that with me. I think other people can start to think about finding their passion that way too.
Yeah, it's funny. You hear a lot of younger siblings and or people that were bullied when they were younger becoming exceptional in certain domains related to physical endeavors or even just exceptional CEOs and entrepreneurs because they develop this grit and this resilience just through the environment. I'm sure that's not always the case. Obviously, you don't want tragedy and hard times just to be persistent throughout childhood, but those signals that you talk about, and even just hearing questions like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And if you sit on that and it makes you feel uncomfortable in some way, it's probably something inside of you that's untapped yet. And we all possess equalizers, and there's a lot of equalizers that we don't have, or I'm sorry, that we're not aware of. And the only way to find them is to get out there and try some new things, be willing to take on that discomfort, and then as you're doing it, you may find certain capacities within yourself where you're performing pretty well, like carrying heavy things. That was one of your equalizers that you learned early on. You're pretty good at carrying heavy things. There's a lot of skills that you still need to develop, but there's one equalizer for you already when you were a beginner.
Yeah, it's very true. And seeing people of all shapes and body types carrying heavy things and like pushing through is really unbelievable. I mean, you mentioned very early on in our conversation here about one of the things I'm trying to do is, and I'm actually going to Dallas for a race there to do this with a group of first timers, is to um, people have read the book and they want to get teams together and then get enough people, go and help them go through their first race, because there is nothing like seeing somebody do something like that they thought they couldn't. And the look on their face the first time, like something just cracks open inside them, and it carries into the next day with how they are with their families and how they are at work. There's just, once we have pushed a limit of ourselves and we've reimagined that limit, there is a ripple effect, and it doesn't have to be huge, right? You don't have to go climb Mount Everest, like little baby steps. I mean, again, my first race was only 5K, and I just didn't want to die. And I fell off the 10 foot from a rope, 10 feet at City Field, which is where the race was that time, and almost started crying and left. And uh, but I finished, right? And that cracked open something that led to the next race and then led to eventually this conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah, we can expand the edges that we explore, and you'll never know your capacity if you're not willing to get near it. And I love the fact that you're offering that opportunity to people so you can do it safely with an expert. And that's the benefit of mentors and coaches, where you have a professional who's been here many times before with other people who can help you explore your personal edges and then expand them, because we can always progressively improve in any capacity that we want to. You write a lot about combating, of course, the midlife assassin and aging in general. And again, it doesn't have to be ops course racing, but you do a great job of showing the benefits of all of the different movements that are within ops course racing, because there's so many great riders on Substack that are preaching fitness and health and nutrition throughout the lifespan, and giving workout ideas. And there's just tons of knowledge out there, but wisdom is different than knowledge, and what is best for a certain individual is going to vary. But without question, when you think about exercise and a lot of the linear patterns that we work out in, um, something is usually better than nothing, as long as you are progressively improving upon it, yada yada. But strength training and mobility, and what you write on, dynamic movements, and that's what ops course racing really offers. So putting these different joints and body parts that we have in their full ranges of motion, using their full capacity, that is a way to challenge your body in ways that standard exercise cannot. As you've gotten in ops course racing, become much more proficient, and then, of course, talking to all these researchers, dynamic movements and the impacts that it has on beneficial aging. What have you learned there?
Well, I like to talk about it in the framework of how it's going to enable us to do things in everyday life that we want to continue to do. How many people do you get on a plane with, Kyle, and you see they can't lift their suitcase into the overhead bin on their own? So that is a strength and dynamic movement to be able to do that. Like, one of my goals is to be able to put my own suitcase in the bin as long as I possibly can. Um, you mentioned dynamic movement in the sense of how you're in obstacle course racing, but think about it in the terms of lateral movement. Tennis is great for lateral movement. We tend to move in one plane, forward and backward, forward and backward. But truly, to keep yourself from falling as you get older and hurting your knee or breaking a hip, which can be the spiral that sends you into, like, falls are one of the worst things that can happen for your mortality as you age. But lateral movement is super important. So training your body to keep moving that way. Grip strength is a huge predictor of mortality. So how are you doing just simple farmer's carries where you carry two heavy weights by your side? How much can you get up in a minute? Can you hang from a bar for 30 seconds or 1 minute or 90 seconds? That is, again, a predictor, but those are things that are going to allow you to live longer, to keep, you have to do strength training. I know I am going to be slightly sexist here, but I can because I'm a woman. Women sometimes don't. They say, like, "Well, I don't want to do strength training. I just like cardio, or I want to just do Pilates," and those things are amazing. And by the way, I'm terrible at Pilates, and I need to do more of it. My sister-in-law does it, and it's my weak spot. But you have to build muscle mass. Like, as a woman, if you do not keep your muscle mass up as you age, you are going to have sarcopenia, and that is going to be, if you fall or if you're not going to be able to reach for things that you need to carry things, pick up your grandkids. Like, so women need to be strength training twice a week. And then our respiratory fitness, building up that aerobic base, right? The zone, people call it zone two, but it's where you can move for a long time and your heart rate's up, but you could still carry on a conversation. People need to be training that a couple of times a week. I'm preaching to the choir with you, and you and I could geek out on all of the like minutia of this to the nth degree. But I think just start with whatever you're doing, start simple. Do not boil the ocean. If you're not moving at all, see if you can get in 10 minutes a day and then make it that 20 and then make that 30 and just work up. Do not think the next day you need to start running a 5K because you're going to get hurt. Like I couldn't remotely have done that. So wherever you are, just see if you can incrementally go up a little bit week by week and set your intentions.
Love it. And again, Michael Easter writes on a lot of these things really well. And he wrote a great piece a while ago on non exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT.
Yeah.
And like I always would think about zone two cardio and its impacts and like the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your training, if you're an endurance athlete, is in that zone two realm. So it should almost feel easier than it does where I like to do the higher intensity stuff, but I have different goals. I'm not purely an endurance athlete. And, but I still try to think about make sure you do those quote unquote easier workouts, longer duration,
Yeah.
lower intensity. But Michael did a great job of really emphasizing zone one and really
Yeah.
just our movement throughout the day outside of those where I think a lot of us can fall victim. I know I have in the past, checking the box that I did my exercise today. And then now I can sit
Sit
and
all
not move
day.
much at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did a nice 45-minute workout, or I'm meeting my 150 minutes according to the guidelines that allows me to do nothing else. And
Right.
I would far rather a lot of zone one, just finding ways to move, finding ways to not use a back or like I think you have a standing desk at work, correct? That you also ruck to work because you find
Yeah.
other ways to fit it in when you can. But
Yeah.
just finding those ways to use your body as well as you can to meet very simple goals. And you end your book like you think of this amazing accomplishment that you've had with ops course racing, then you list out these goals and you think you're going to give these. Okay, I want to be number one in the U.S., which by the way you did accomplish without setting the goal. But you give very simple goals about the longevity of your life, what you want to be able to do in support of the people you love and yourself to keep thriving, despite the inevitable assassin trying to make its moves on you. But you're combating it with your fitness to just live fully.
And that's a good way for anyone to start again if they don't know what they want to do or if they're even interested in movement, like make a list of the things you still want to be able to do in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. Um, and then start to think about back. I mean, look, AI and Chat GPT is our friend now. You can ask questions on what you need to do. If you don't have money to hire a trainer or anybody, right, then you can get a pretty good workout by plugging that into, by asking AI, like using AI to program something for you. But like, just back it out from those things. What do you need to be training now to be able to do those things? That itself is a very, very important, valid goal. Like, you do not need to be training to be for medals or world championships. I mean, great if you do, but honestly, like, the most important thing to me right now is one, I wanna be able to live to 60, 78, like 80, 90, and if I live that long, I wanna be able to move and do things, and so everything I think about now is in that framework, and that's a different kind of ambition than, again, I wanna climb all of the mountains, the biggest mountains in the world. I would still like to do those things too, but they are a lesser priority to me than overall longevity, and it is, like you said, you have to think about all the pieces of it. You can't just move for 45 minutes a day. I have a standing desk, as you said, at work. I had facilities take away my chair. They couldn't understand. They're like, what? No, you have to have a chair. I was like, I don't want a chair because I'm in meetings so much where I have to sit. Even though try to get up, that when I come back to my desk, I don't even want the chair there. So the chair's gone. I have no chair. Um, 15 minutes walking from Grand Central to um, the Dow Jones Wall Street Journal building, I use those 15 minutes to ruck. Like, I have heavy weight on my backpack, and that's 15 minutes there and back. Just little things to do, but those are keeping me moving and not just static. Like, Yep, clocked my 30 minutes today. I'm good. Like I can eat what I want. I can drink as much alcohol as I want. I can have cupcakes and I can sit the rest of the day and watch Netflix. Like that's not going to cut it.
Yeah, and of course, feed your soul based on who you are in moderation with certain things, but
Yeah.
by all means, don't think you've earned to do anything because of a short period of time during the day, but you also beautifully just demonstrated how maybe you don't have the time that you used to have in your previous job, but you're finding the ways to still add in that intentional movement within your life patterns, like throwing on a little weight in your walks to and from the job, removing the chair. Your book is such a good framework based on not only your story and skill progression within it, but the experts that you talk to, as we talked about earlier. Another one of my favorite books on this concept is Built to Move by Kelly Starrett. And I think his wife helped write that one too. And it's 10 chapters on 10 different movement patterns. And you talk about going from beginner, not able to do anything, building up to the capacity that helps with longevity and decreasing mortality risk. They beautifully do what I try to do in my writing of starting where literally anyone can do it, and then over time, if you do it consistently, you will enhance your mobility and or strengthen the movement pattern to get to proficiency unmodified. And that's just another great tool outside of the AI assistant that we have these days that can give you all kinds of ideas as well. If you're not a founding member of Not Too Late, where you can get an even better reference in your book.
Well, a part of it's making it non-negotiable in your day. I mean, I wrote a 5-part series on my Substack about how to make exercise non-negotiable because I think that's the thing. And again, by non-negotiable doesn't mean there's not going to be the day where something happens and you can't do it, but generally non-negotiable. And so that's kind of part of what you're getting at there. And I think for other people, like it's keeping checklists. Like we all like to see boxes checked, right? That's kind of how we're wired as human beings. And just starting simply and having that to check or turning a box on your calendar from red to green, like those visual signals are important. They still work for me when I'm trying to put a new protocol. Like I'm trying to get more calcium in my diet right now. And so I did for because it's good for bones, right? And I'm pretty good, but I think I need more at this stage. So I started tracking just in a notebook, like how much calcium I was getting each day. And again, ChatGPT made it easy to know. I could say, this is what I ate, and it tells me. And I did that for about 5 weeks. And so now I know, like, oh, this is what I have to do to get there because I wasn't getting there before. But that's how one way I made getting enough calcium now non negotiable is because I just practiced and practiced and practiced and recorded. You can do that with almost anything you want to change.
100%. I love checklists. If I didn't have reminders on my phone, I wouldn't get half the menial tasks that I get done every day for my work or life. But those check boxes are never excuses for other things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are ways to make sure I get done what I intend to get done each day. But I do love every time I can take one of those items and just push it to a future date. It always feels so good to empty out the checklist because it's not actually necessary today. So I can
Yeah.
do things that we prioritize. I know we're getting close because you have some other obligations today, and gosh, you are too easy to talk to. Like I said, I could, as we were joking, I could do this for 10 hours for sure, but unfortunately, I have another obligation, so we'll do the 10-hour pod another time.
Yeah,
But
because you're right,
I,
because you're resilient, like, right? That's an endurance. Let's see if we can filibuster and do all right, the marathon, ultra marathon version of a podcast one day, and see who can stick with us that long
while rucking.
while rocking. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you just upped it. We'll have to get Michael Easter for that one.
There we go. Down. Um, your first book is about community, and you have, I would imagine, many communities in your life, like we all can. Substack is a community. You and I connected because of Substack, and I've gotten so much from you personally, and then of course just through your account and your writing. But we all have our core networks, our core communities, and you talk about that in your book. It's Earl, it's your parents, and it's Lisa, your wife. Earl sounds incredible, by the way. I don't have a lot of questions about him, but he sounds like the coolest. He sounds like he's your go-to whenever Lisa or your parents can't be there, but you've done a lot of cool excursions together. So like another thing when I was talking about pain being a mental state and like you having maybe this itch that you've been wanting to scratch for a long time, you did boxing with him and you actually did a fight. I guess
I
I do have
did.
a question. You did a fight when you did boxing with Earl.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I guess, yeah, I want to hear about that real quick.
Well, so did you see me instinctively raise my hand to my head because my head still hurts? This was like 25 years ago. So Earl's been my closest friend since we met as I was a baby reporter right out of college at the Wall Street Journal, an intern, and I met him there, and he sort of taught me everything I knew about business reporting. We became close friends and have stayed. I mean, he's actually back with me at the Wall Street Journal now, 30 some years later, working together. Sits right next to me. He too does not have a chair. But I digress. So what was I saying to you about him?
Boxing.
Oh, the boxing. So he's kind of like my big brother, and whatever he would do, I would kind of follow and do too. So he started boxing at one point. When I'd first moved to New York in the mid '90s, so I started boxing, and we each had a what they call a white collar fight in the ring, and he had his with this guy who was like a policeman, and he did pretty well. He held his own. I got in there with this woman who had fought in the Golden Gloves before. Like if you know boxing, the Golden Gloves is like that's you're really good if you fought the Golden Gloves. And then there was little me in there, my mask. And she just like, I mean, I stayed in, but she just used my head going back. They took video of it. Like, I just got pummeled. I mean, I stayed in the ring. I didn't like get knocked down, but I walked out. I had a headache for 3 weeks. And that was like, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to be a good writer if I don't have a brain. So I did not do a white collar match again, but that was one of the things Earl got me into. He also made me not made me. I made myself. I followed him into a cold ocean on a polar bear, one of those plunges, and I don't know why. I'm like, why did I do that? And we go in. It's so cold. We're back on the beach, and he's like, it's a little bit competitive. He looks at me and he's like, so you want to go again? I was like, no, and don't even say that. Do I want to go again? Because now you make me be the one who doesn't want to go. You know what I mean? So it's that you can see the like little bit of sibling rivalry we have, even though we're not siblings.
He sounds awesome, and
Yeah.
just like that unconditional support that he's provided you, going on a lot of these excursions around the world for some of your events. Yeah, he sounds like the best. You're
Well, Kyle, I mean, to the point of mastery and other things that aren't obstacle course, like he became a volunteer fireman when he was in his late 50s, like he's now, I think, 61. He's probably gonna be mad at me for saying that, but oh well. But he became a volunteer fireman, and now he's the head of his volunteer fireman department. Like he's the head of the department. Like, and he does that in addition to having this massive full-time job. And that took years of training for him, changed his life.
It's never too late. It's not too late for you right now, and it's never too late. And you're surrounded by people who demonstrate that, including your parents.
Yeah.
So both your parents sound incredible. Your dad sounds like he was pretty active already in certain ways, but he's intentionally training now. Your mom, however, did not sound like she was that much of a savage until you started demonstrating your inner savage. But when you write pieces on your mom on your Substack account and how you talk about it in the book, I mean, you talk about like being at an advanced age and then completely transforming your approach to training. Tell me about your awesome mom. And you and I have done in the comments a few times talking about some of the workouts that she does. Remarkable. It is so cool, inspiring.
Well, my mom's a savage in another way, as many Southern mothers are, and she's going to come find you, Kyle, for saying she wasn't a savage. You should hide. You should lock your door because she's going to come for you. Um, but I'll be there for you. They were active in the way like they water skied and snow skied and scuba dived, so they weren't non-active. But as they hit their sort of 70s, my dad has been out in his he has a lot of property, and he just tends to that property. He does not want another human being to touch his land, so he is out there with tractors and hauling concrete for their bulkhead that's on the water and all sorts of things. Like he's moving all the time. My mom had not moved so much. I was really getting concerned as they approached 80, and I think by virtue of seeing my transformation, um, I really was on them about movement and getting back to the gym. And so I literally stopped giving them any gifts that weren't going to be not were not associated with their wellness. So I give them for their Christmas or their birthdays, they get a gym membership or they get personal training sessions. And that is it. Or they get shoes to work out in. Like we're done with all other things. And so they're now back in the gym multiple 3 days a week. They have outfitted a gym upstairs in their attic. They have battle ropes. They have kettlebells. They are my mom you should see my 81-year I think she's 81, do not get mad at me, mom, if I messed up your age. Like, she well, on the battle rope, she's incredible, and so, the first time she went and got on a Precor machine at, like, 80, I mean, Kyle, she couldn't even do 1 minute. Like, she's up to 20 minutes now, and they both just and if you can do that in your early 80s, if you're in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s or your 60s or your 70s and you're thinking it's too late for me, it is not too late. And it saved my father's life. He fell off his roof power washing it and he fell 10 feet, cracked his head on the concrete, fractured, bloody imprint. The dog was barking. My mom came, found him. They had to medevac him out to Camp Lejeune, the military base in Jacksonville. You know it very well. Uh, and they thought he was gonna die, and the truth, my father walked out that day. He had, like, a fracture, in his vertebrae and in his pelvis, and he healed a year later. Like, he went to UNC to see one of the top doctors in the country, and the guy could not believe my father's bones healed because he had just been active in his yard doing things physically and not sitting for so long, and it saved his life and probably his just mobility. So, I'm bragging on my parents. You teed them up. My mom's almost to your house, so we can stop talking about them now.
Mrs. Bounds, I did not mean to imply you weren't a savage in general. I meant in the physical training realm. To raise a savage, you have to be a savage, and you have raised a savage in Wendy. So for sure, you're just demonstrating another part of your savagery that was untapped for a while. So hopefully, I'm saving myself right now.
Well done, Kyle. I I
Thank you
think
very much.
I think she might be turning around. I think I can hear her turning around.
Well, have her pick me up because I want to go down to Camp Lejeune. I miss it there. That was my first
Exactly.
taste. I love that area.
Oh my
But
god, my parents would love you. You and your family can come visit sometime.
heck yeah, we'll plan it. We'll go train down there.
Yeah,
Actually, I go down there for a few reasons every once in a while. That'd be fun. And I know you train down there quite a bit due to different health reasons that you write about in your book, and you wrote about your dad's fall in your book too. And of course, as an audiologist, fall prevention when you talk about vestibular and the balance drum, which is one of my favorite aspects of my scope of practice. I don't do it as much for my current job, but yeah, being fit prevents falls, but also being fit if and when you inevitably make a mistake and do fall is going to help you not only endure it, but recover well from it. So fitness is going to help with prevention when it happens and the recovery. So there's just it's very hard to make excuses for not trying to better your health from a physical fitness perspective because you never know. You can do everything right, and sometimes you're just going to eat it, or something's going to
totally.
give out from underneath of you. So that about your dad, thank goodness, because I mean,
Yeah.
falling off a roof, that's and falling on the ground, on the hard ground is one thing. I mean, he
Concrete,
had a
concrete, like yeah, I mean, let's be super clear, Savage Mom basically said to him they've been together since they were 16 years old, and Savage Mom said to Dad, like, "If you go back on that roof again ever, I will divorce you." And I don't think she was kidding after 56 whatever many years it's been since they've been together, so, yeah, but, you got 1 fall. You get one roof fall, Kyle, so pick your moment in your
fair
own
enough.
marriage.
I'm gonna wait until later, like your
Yeah,
dad
wait
did.
till later.
I'm gonna stay in shape like your dad did, so I
That's
can
right. You can when you get to be 82, do it and see if you can not
last
we're not encouraging that.
last, Lisa. I mean, you're the best. I loved your book. There's so many awesome quotes in it, but my favorite quote from the book was before I think it was your first race, but it was at least early on, and you were feeling pretty intimidated. You were seeing the people who do these races, most of them are going to look quite fit, be in great shape, walk around with their T-shirts and their medals, and so you were articulating that in the car. Lisa says, and I quote, "Whatever. They have a bunch of stickers and some T-shirts. So what?" That is so funny and such a cool way to respond to, like, what a awesome reframe. She sounds like the best. Tell me about Lisa.
Yeah, well, I'm really first of all, I'm lucky in general, to have her, but I was really lucky in that day because I was terrified going in that first race, and I mean, I feel so bad, like, I had made her get up early, and, like, I was so nervous about missing the start time that I think I got us there, like, 3 hours early, and so it was, like she hadn't slept, and so we're driving in, and I'm, like, whining about all these people, and look at how intense they are, and they all they're so muscly and they have t-shirts and stickers and she's like barely got coffee in her and she's like whips out what you say. She's like, yeah, so what? They got t-shirts and some stickers like shut up.
Who
Like just
cares?
yeah. And then like other things happen. But she's like the voice of calm and reason because she has deadpan humor. And she is always just like, first of all, like let's level set for anybody. who is in a relationship, and it is when one person in that relationship goes off and does something new, like, it upends the dynamic of things, right? I mean, in some ways, I think she thought it would be a one and done race. Like, I do this and get it out of my system. Lo and behold, here we are 9 years later, race 57 coming up. I've traveled all over the world doing this. It consumes my weekends and, um, yeah, but uh, so you have to be careful to explain why you're doing it. You need to, as you said, really well on take care of your home first, right? Take
Yes.
care of the people around you first. Be cognizant of them. Bring that. Communicate why you're doing this. That it's not about wanting to change and be a different person. You're not trying to be like. I mean, maybe you are going to be different, but it's not about something they're not giving you. It's not about an emptiness you have because of them. It's about something else you want to fulfill. I did kind of a terrible job of communicating that early on, but I got better at it. And then be understanding when they go off on their journey. She's on a journey. She's right now 4 hours of acting class. She's on a journey to become an actor, and she's been on air and TV for most of her career. But acting is new, so she, like Earl, he went to become a firefighter. She's doing acting, and now I have to accept that and make the accommodations in my life for that. So I think for all of us, whoever is important to us in our life, our friends, our family, when we're off doing something new, like, don't forget about, I call it, don't forget the previous chorus, right? Like, don't forget that chorus of your life because it's what got you to where you are. And if you don't want to totally change it and have those people not be in your life, you need to be pretty communicative and understanding of their needs when you're going off and doing something new. You've probably experienced this in your own marriage.
Most of our wives are probably our nuclear family in some capacity, or the people in our lives that are most important to us. And I always tell myself not to forget my why. So, like, I go on these unique endeavors, but if it's pulling me away from them too much, that's and I don't communicate. Which, man, we could keep talking all day, and I could share stories, and we can keep going. You actually weave what you just talked about beautifully into your book, and I really enjoyed that too. That resonated deeply because you get on these individual pursuits for self improvement, and ultimately these quote unquote selfish endeavors are selfless too because you're trying to become healthier all around to keep showing up for what's most important to you. But how you communicate and how you show up during those shifts is very important. I've had to experience those lessons myself. But yeah, she sounds like the absolute coolest. And some of the issues that came up in like purchases that you made, things that you didn't talk about, all
Ah,
hilarious, all just a
yeah.
natural part of life, particularly when you're becoming a fanatic about a new aspect of something that's supplementing your soul. That book, I mean, it made me cry. It made me laugh. I laugh out loud with Lisa's quote, especially, and everything else, and particularly just lit a fire under my ass. In this case, for ops course racing, because I do like ops course racing, but really for so many things and just skill development. Anything is possible if you put yourself in the arena early on, ideally with a mentor of some kind, friend that has experience and or coach. But without, I'm not being like, I'm not exaggerating because I'm talking to you today. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It hit me in a time in my life that was really valuable for me, one that I will reread and one I can't recommend enough. And talking to you today was that much better. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle. I mean, you sit alone writing a book, you're right, in a room writing 90,000 words, and you never know who's going to read it, what anybody will think, will it help anybody, change anybody's life. And then it's only on the other side when you get to meet people like you. The people we have a lot of people in common on Substack in this community. The people who are listening now and who are your followers and who follow all the important posts you do with such regularity. I commend you for that. But it's on the other side of it. Like that's the reason to write a book. Is that you get to have conversations like this later, learn other people's tools and tricks and trades for how they're living their life, which is what you've shared a lot of that today with all of us, but you do that every day on Substack. So again, I consider it one of the gifts of writing a book, and so thank you for having me join you today.
Been an honor. Looking forward to talking soon. You take care, Wendy.
Thank you. Bye.